Toma here, doing another video about what we have been learning this week about two-dimensional shapes and three-dimensional shapes. Um, I did one video that just focused on two-dimensional shapes, and then I did another video that focused on three-dimensional shapes. So just before I move in to this video, we'll just do a quick review about two-dimensional shapes and three-dimensional shapes. So just to remember, the main difference between the two is two-dimensional shapes are flat shapes. We can see that over here. They're flat shapes. Three-dimensional shapes that we could see over here, they are shapes that pop out at you. And one thing that you can use to help remember this difference is think about 3D movies. When you watch them in the theater and you have to wear those glasses, you see the things pop out at you in the movie. So that's how you can help remember that 3D shapes also pop out at you, whereas two-dimensional shapes are flat. So let's just quickly review some of the names of the shapes that we learned. So we have a circle, rectangle, square, trapezoid, triangle, hexagon. We have another rectangle over here, star, rectangle. We have a diamond, another circle, a half circle, or a semicircle. So half or semi, you could use either or. Semi also means half. And then on this side, we have our three-dimensional shapes, or 3D. So we have cylinder, cube, sphere, cone, triangular prism, and rectangular prism. Now remember, these are not all of the things that we learned, just some. Okay, so what we're going to be doing in this video is just looking at pictures and seeing if we can identify the shapes within them. So over here, we're going to be focusing more on our two-dimensional shapes, our flat shapes. So I can point out just a few for you, and you can review this video with your parents or your siblings and try to see how much you can point out yourself at home. So, I mean, right away you could see there's a circle, the house is made of a triangle, we have a square, the door's a rectangle, the sheep are made of a pentagon. Remember, that has 5 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Also, look at the stars. They have 6 sides, so that would be a hexagon. So you can just review this picture and see how many shapes can you pull out from here. And we're focusing on two-dimensional shapes over here. Another picture to look at is something that you may have seen before. This is a picture of a soccer field. And a soccer field is made up of many different shapes as well. A lot of the things around us in our life, everything is made up of shapes. So now that we know the names to a lot of the two-dimensional shapes and three-dimensional shapes, we can point them out when we're driving or when we're walking. So here's a real-life example, a soccer field. You can see we have the rectangle that makes up the field. This is a circle, but half of it would be called a semicircle. And just like over here too, we have a semicircle. And then we have another rectangle over here. So those are just some shapes that I can see right away. So this is another picture that you can go through and see how many shapes can you identify throughout all this. Now over here we have a basketball court, another way that we can see shapes through this real life example. So just like with a soccer field, we see a semicircle or a half circle right over here. This makes up our full circle. We have a rectangle over here and a big rectangle that makes up the court, just like you could see over here. So this is another way that you can go through this and try to see how many shapes can you pull out from looking at this basketball court. Now looking into three-dimensional shapes, this over here, just make it a little bit bigger, has pictures and that has the names, and we would need to identify the names that match with these pictures. So let's start with this. Is this a cone, a cube, or a cylinder? Well, I know a cube looks kind of like a square, so it can't be a cube. A cylinder looks like a bottle of Coke or a bottle of soup, so I know it can't be a cylinder, but this does look like a cone. Just like when we were learning about cones, I showed an example of an ice cream cone. So this also has the shape of a cone. So this would be cone. Now over here, we have this basketball. So is that a cone, a sphere, or a cylinder? Now a basketball is in the shape of a circle, but it's three-dimensional. And the three-dimensional name for that would be a sphere. Not a circle, it would be a sphere, because remember, circles are flat. Now over here, we have a soda can. So is this a cylinder, a cone, or a cube? Well, I know just from my last video that I use this as an example, so this would be a cylinder. Now going on over here, this dice, is that a cone, a cube, or a cylinder? Well, I know a cone looks like this, and a cylinder looks like this, so I know this has to be a cube. A cube. A cube looks like a square, but it's three-dimensional. Now we have this birthday cake. It's a two-level birthday cake. So is this a sphere, a cube, or a cylinder? Well, a sphere is like this basketball. So this cake does not look like the basketball. A cube looks like this dice over here. So I know this would be closest to a cylinder. Now we have this party hat. This party hat, is it a cone, a sphere, or a cylinder? Well, this party hat looks closest to the cone. As you can see, this party hat, and compare it to these traffic cones that you would see outside, they have the same shape. So this party hat would also be a cone. Now we have this ice cream cone, and we know from my last video that this was the example I used, and as you could see, the cone over here, we will not be using the ice cream in this, just looking at the cone. That cone looks like the party hat and this traffic cone. So this would be also a cone. Now this box, is that a cone, a cube, or a cylinder? Well, a cone looks like this ice cream cone, so it can't be that. A cube looks like this dice, and that looks like it has almost the same shape. So this box would be considered a cube. And then lastly, we have this lollipop. So we're just going to mostly look at the circular shape. So is that a sphere, a cone, or a cube? Well, just looking at the lollipop, the circular shape up here, we could see that it's just the same shape as this basketball. It's circle, but it's three-dimensional. So this would be considered a sphere. Remember that the three-dimensional objects pop out at you. So over here, it's another practice of it gives you the names on this left-hand side, and you need to find the objects that match up with the name. So for example, we have a sphere over here. Which objects over here look like the sphere? Well, I know right off the bat, this basketball looks like the sphere, and this globe looks like the sphere. So I have 1 and 2 that look like the sphere. Over here, the cube, which one of these 4 or there could be more than one, resemble or look like the cube. So we could see that these blocks look like the cube and this dice looks like the cube. So we'd have two. Our next one is a cone. Which ones look like the cone? So we know the ice cream cone that one would be an answer, and the party hat would also be an answer. And then lastly, cylinder. We know the soda can would be an answer, and then this log would also be an answer. This log is just flipped in a different direction. It's laying side to side instead of up and down like how the can is. But as you could see, it still has the same shape. They still have the same shape. So this log would also be considered a cylinder. Now, this is another picture that you can use to go through and just see how many three-dimensional shapes can you name. So this says, can you find at least 10 shapes? So I'll do a couple with you, and then you can see if you can find the rest at home. So we have some of the names down here that you can use. So we have a cuboid, which we know that could also be a rectangular prism. We have a cube, a sphere, a cone, a pyramid, a cylinder, and a triangular prism. So just looking at this picture right away, I could see that the sun would be considered a sphere. Over here, this would be a pyramid, And then this tent over here would be considered a triangular prism. So those are just a couple of those shapes that I could just see right off the bat from looking at this picture. So you can try this at home and see if you can find any more. And then lastly, I have this picture, and this picture has two-dimensional, which are flat, and three-dimensional shapes in this picture. So this is a great practice to see if you can find two-dimensional shapes in this picture and three-dimensional shapes in this picture. You can do this at home with your parents or your siblings and just look at this picture. You can pause the video just to get a longer look at the picture and see how many shapes you can identify. And this is a great way to practice the new names that we've been learning about. So you could see right off the bat, this hopscotch, that's flat, so that would be a square. But this balloon is not flat, so that would be a sphere. So that's how you can go through this picture and make a list to see how many two-dimensional flat shapes you can find and how many three-dimensional pop-up shapes you can find. So I thought this would be a great way to practice so that we are able to get more familiarized with learning these new names that we've been talking about this week.